right, back at it now. You can look at the old folks' home in Washington, D.C., better known as Congress, and have plenty to say about that. And say, hey, maybe it's time for term limits. I'm not a big believer in term limits, never have been. I've always felt that elections create term limits. If somebody's not good, you get rid of them. However, elections are buried with so much money that we don't even know where it comes from. Act Blue comes to mind, that maybe we need to control that. But my next guest, Erin Tobin, is a former member of the South Dakota State Senate. She says it's time for term limits. She's with me now. Erin, good morning.
Good morning, Steve. How are you?
I'm good. Nice to see you today. So John Larson, I saw this a couple days ago, froze up during a speech. He's 76. Mitch McConnell has frozen several times. And in fact, here's what Mitch McConnell would say. Okay, good. We got that in. Nancy Pelosi is 84. She broke her hip. And you say, look, we need term limits. I say I'm still skeptical. I mean, I look at Chuck Grassley. I think he's 90. He's doing just fine. Donald Trump's 78. He's doing just fine. I understand your point, though, so give me your sales pitch. Why should we have term limits?
Well, all I have to say is that make a few points here, but I could go on and on and on. And I'll say simply, in 2020, 150 billionaire families spent $1.4 billion in the election cycle alone. I mean, if you think that laws are created for you and me and not billionaire donors.
Hold on. You're identifying what I said. The problem is money, not terms. The problem is the money that comes in and doesn't come from billionaire families. Act Blue launders it in from all sorts of places all over the globe. In fact, some would argue that the entire Watergate break-in was an attempt to figure out where foreign money was coming into the United States by way of the Democrat Party. That's one of the theories out there about how the whole Watergate break-in began, looking for illicit money flowing into the United States political system from outside the country. So you're talking about money. That's not term limits.
Yes, and that's just one of the angles. Money, when you don't have term limits, money just naturally becomes a huge problem. We have a seat that will be possibly opened up for our seat in Congress, and anybody who's fighting for that seat knows that once you're in there, everything's cushy and good, and then you're just raising more money to get reelected, and you're not working for the people at home. You're working for that reelection bid, for that extra, money that's in your war chest. And at the end of the day, it has a lot to do with many different things, reasons why we should have term limits. But, if, as you're talking about John Larson freezing up and Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi breaking a hip, these sorts of things, I'm a nurse practitioner, and I look at some of that and feel like it certainly feels like elder abuse, truthfully. And I think the party can sometimes hold on to these guys and gals too long because there's a lot of benefit to them. Lobbyists want to hold on to them longer because there's, they're bought and paid for, and there's benefit to them. But there's a lot of issues that happen when you can go to Washington and live out the rest of your life.
Right, but you keep coming back to money. And in fairness, Erin, you keep coming back to money as being the problem, not terms, but money, because you're right. The reelect rate of U.S. senators is 90% or better. The chance of being reelected as a sitting U.S. senator is better than 90%. Now we saw 3 or 4 lose this time around. But when it comes to term limits, like there's going to be an open Senate seat in Michigan unexpectedly coming up in 26, coming up next year. And I will tell you, though, they being outside forces, will spend $100 million or more trying to get it to the Democrat or the Republican side of the ledger. $100 million will flow into Michigan next year for this race for the United States Senate. That doesn't have to do with term limits. That has to do with dark money and people trying to pull the strings, right?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of different issues that could be worked on, but we're not working on any of them. And term limits, I think, would offer valuable new members who want to go up and solve problems, members who are...
I agree with that, but how would it get out? Because the real problem is not the members necessarily. It's the people that are their staff, that when one person leaves Congress, they just shuffle over to the next office, and they're there, and they shuffle over to the next office. These are the people doing the real work. How do you solve it? And to me, that's a bigger problem than term limits and the money, because we haven't solved the money problem here. I mean, if you spend $100 million on an open Senate seat in Michigan, the problem is not term limits, it's an open seat. The problem is money, right?
Right. And these are all valid arguments, and these are arguments that people stand behind when they're voting against term limits. But at the end of the day, I am a state senator with my experience. We have term limits in South Dakota, but take some of the more experienced U.S. senators' word for it, such as J.D. Vance, and him saying that we have a geriatric ruling class that doesn't understand that our U.S. government is literally less powerful than the big money business community. And term limits is something that will help this, along with other things that could be worked on as well. But the truth is, nobody's really pushing as hard as they should be to get there because of that cushy job that you can live with forever. And it would be scary to be in DC for the last 49 years and have to go back to normal life. That would be extremely scary. Or 20 years, and it shouldn't be that way because we're all living, under the laws that Congress has created, and they should be threatened with having to live under their laws as well.
Erin, how does somebody find your organization to find out more about term limits and what you're pushing for?
Yes, well, it's easy. ustermlimits.com, and there is a multitude of different avenues that you can help out. There's a lot of information on the website as well.
ustermlimits.com. You can find out more what Erin is pushing for. ustermlimits.com. Erin Tobin, former member of the South Dakota State Senate. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Steve. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Term limits. I don't disagree with them, but I think the bigger problem is we have identified there. At least the bigger problem short term to me is how all this money from Act Blue and all these others. They'll spend $100 million for this Senate seat in Michigan next year. $100 million. Maybe $200 million. I'll take a break. I'll be back. It's the Steve Gruber Show Sports up next.